they manage their access control thing? Now, how do they manage their virtual private network? Now, these are very critical for any business.
Hi, Venkatesh. Welcome to AIM's podcast, Simulated Reality. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good, and thanks for having me here. So, I would love to meet with you and see where we can go with this discussion. So, I'm excited, basically. So, yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, we are going to talk about a topic very relevant today in the age of AI and data science, which is taking a cloud-centric approach. Before we start, right, what has your journey been like in the AI and data science industry, and why did you decide to talk? You thought that this is a good topic of discussion, especially considering, everybody wants to talk Gen AI. Why did you want to visit the basics?
We all know that Gen AI is like a fancy topic today in today's world, and everyone is talking about that. But I always take a step back always and see how the foundation is built around all these things, right? When it comes to that, data and analytics comes as a core part of that, right? Like if you think about Gen AI is like a tip of an iceberg, right? It looks more beautiful. Nobody knows how Gen AI is going to turn into, right? It has a lot of vulnerability. It has a lot of things which is not proven now. People are still in early exploration mode, right? But in order to see that, becoming a more GA kind of product, it takes another 5 to 6 years in my way. That the reason is all about like how you have your foundational data platform feeding all this data into the models which can train on it, and how it can get the result back to the customer or whatever it is, right? So I always think that the backbone of all these things needs to be much stronger, right? That's where the data platform is coming to picture, and that's where the data and AI will play a core part, that the data will eventually feeds into a AI world where everything will become much easier in the future. Is that true or not? I don't know. I mean, we are still in the early stage, and we are in more exciting phase of our technological career, right? Things are moving. There are more, powerful GPUs in the industries which can do many processing, multi-petabyte of data. Things can happen anything, but we don't know how accurate these things are, right? So that's one of the reason I try to keep myself onto the backbone of all these next gen technologies, which is data analytics. Building those foundational data is very critical for any company, either it's a small company or an enterprise thing. Building that foundation is very critical, and that's where the cloud-centric approach will come into picture, that how fast you can build this foundational layer for any size of the company is very critical for anyone in the industry, that they can run their data strategy along with their company's business strategy, right? You cannot just go and say that, oh, there is a Gen AI is there, oh, I want to spin up some, notes and see what happens and all. That is not going to work. It's always going to work like what the business strategy is, where the company wants to use this technology or whatnot. So I always spend more time in my personal experience, that work with our business stakeholders and understand where the company is going, where are the huge pain points, how the products are behaving, and how the data strategy or data analytics strategy can help them to streamline them in much easier way and help them to make right decisions, right? And this foundational data can open up much more opportunities in the future, right? Any new technology comes into picture, we will just use the same solid data, feed it back.
Yeah, and in the context of what you all just mentioned, right, building the strong foundation, what essentially defines the transformative power of a cloud-centric approach, right, within the realm of data and analytics? And how do you kind of see it shaping the future of this industry?
I mean, the cloud-centric approach is it's all about how quickly you can build some of these foundational layers, right? In 10, 15 years ago, it used to take us like many months or sometimes years to build the platform engineering team or any of the infrastructure to collect the data, process the data, feed it back to our customers and try to understand. So those journeys completely transform into more faster manner, because the migrating towards the cloud is much easier way for us to adapt the customer behavior and collect those behavior in real time and create that looping strategy, get the feedback from the customer and feed it back to your product feature or back to your, for example, a model could be, right? How you can train the model, and everything is surrounded by how your cloud ecosystem has built, how fast you can collect the data, how faster you can process that, and how in near real time you can take the context or insight out of that and understand the customer behavior in a fraction of seconds. It could be in few seconds, right? And how faster you can reach out to your customer to give them a next best experience, right? And that's where the cloud-centric approach is going to take every company, starting from a small startup to an enterprise-wide companies. They can be more competitive in this market, right? And that's where the cloud-centric is very critical. You want to build something quickly, that's a way you can go and spin up something, try something, what works, and convert that into an MVP product, and eventually, move it to the next level and so on. So I think that's
Also,
Mhm.
yeah. How did things happen before? Like, what were some of the limitations or challenges that you saw? Because I've had this conversation about on-premise cloud and hybrid data model
Yeah,
with multiple people, especially in the context of building AI applications. I don't think there is any newer applications that are being built that are not cloud centric or that are not built on the cloud first, right? Most of them want to kind of build that. What were the challenges, right, that kind of led everyone to move towards a cloud centric approach?
see, it's all about its maintenance, right? It's all about how much time you spend managing your infrastructure or whatnot, right? Managing a data center in a in-house manner, it's very expensive sometimes, and it's very time consuming. It becomes more overhead for the engineering or an IT team in the company. Rather than they spend time on managing the infrastructure, the business strategy talks about how they can improvise the product. So instead of spending more time on managing the IT, you try to see how you can build the product that can support the business strategy. So that's where all these companies started thinking that, okay, in what way we can move away from managing all these IT things and move it to a cloud-centric way where you don't need to worry about managing the infrastructure. You can just use it as when you need, right? Pay for what you're going to use it for. That helps them to concentrate more on the efficiency, scalability, how faster they can deliver the products, right? Forget about how the IT maintenance, whatnot. Concentrate more on what kind of products you can build through your IT infrastructure. Now, how it can be aligned with your business strategy so that you can reach to the goal, whatever the strategy has put for the company's level, right? Oh, in my opinion, it all comes down to what's the business strategy, how fast they need to reach certain targets, and how a tech team or a data strategy team can help them go there, right? If somebody has a 1 year or 2 year plan, and if you're still trying to build your infrastructure for a year or two, you're missing the boat. Now, you're not being competitive in the market. You have to put up your infrastructure, then build application, and forget about all those things, right? Start directly jump into your building application. And that's where the value is. Like you can spin up anything you want in the cloud strategy. You can scale it at any time, scale up and down based on the usage and all. It gives more power for a customers to build the product what they need to, hand it over in the hand of the customer, right? So that they can improvise their business. So it all comes down to how faster they can build the product. That's a simple answer, right?
But at the same time, it's also, while flexibility is given by this thing, it's also very costly, right? The cost factor is always has been a kind of, has discouraged a lot of companies to kind of take up, go completely cloud and build their applications there.
Yeah, see, it all depends on, right? Like every business has their own limitations. For example, if you look at regulatory institution, right, like insurance or banking and all, they have a limitation that how much data they can expose in the public cloud or whatnot, and they have to go through the complex data compliance regulatory. There's a lot of GDPR, there's a lot of local laws and all. They need to make sure how they can protect the data. All these things will come into picture in their certain business units to figure out what is the right approach they can do, right? Like some of this legacy system could not be migrated to cloud. So there is no way it's a system running on DB2 mainframe and all. Do you think they can move to cloud? I don't think so. So there could be many enterprises still running on in-house. And they have a strategy that any next-gen application or the futuristic system built in the company can still go towards the cloud-centric, which is going from the ground up, not from migrating this legacy system, which takes many years. And also the confidence level could be, 10 to 20%. and the losing the faith in the system what you build will automatically push you back and think that, okay, don't do the cloud migration, let's stick with your in-house and see how you can use a hybrid model where you can take your in-house data as well as whatever the new system you're building, where the next gen data is going to come, how you can merge these two data and do this hybrid cloud, what we call it a hybrid cloud strategy, where some data can come from your in-house data center or whatnot. Some data can come from the public cloud. Some can come from private clouds. All this data can come from different places, but as a company, you have an ability to get the context out of all this different data, right? When we say cloud-centric, is this the only solution we have? I totally agree. There is no one solution for this, because everyone thinks that moving cloud is a good thing, but it has its own disadvantage also, right? The moment you move to certain providers, you're locking yourself into them, right? You will be bound to their vendor agnostic thing. They might be basically going to lock yourself into that. So in my experience, we try to see how flexibility we can get out of using certain cloud providers. Is there a way we can use the hybrid cloud providers so that we will have more flexibility with the negotiation, and how we can get a better support, whatnot and all. So in my opinion, going towards a single provider is more challenging than going for hybrid, because it gives you more flexibility. The provider will know that, oh, this customer can move to any other side. So they will not push you to move to any other side. So for example, let's say you go to a cloud provider XYZ, and they say that, oh, we will give you credit to migrate all your system into so and so. Some team thinks, oh, we're getting so much discount, and now let's do that. Once you move everything into this provider, then you're locked into that. So then whatever happens in the cloud provider, they might say that, oh, our strategy has changed now. This is what it is. We moved from subscription model to, on-demand basis, whatnot. You will kind of stuck to, shake your heads to the way how they're deciding, right? So we have to be very intelligent to figure out doing cloud-centric approach. It depends on how you will establish your strategy and getting your ecosystem into one provider or multiple providers. So in my opinion, you have to be very sensitive about how you can distribute your ecosystem into different providers and see where you can retrofit into that and get good insight out of it. See, every provider is good in their own way, right? For example, if you look at Microsoft products, most of the companies running on Microsoft application, they tend to go for their cloud because it's very expensive for them to go on AWS or whatnot, right? So Google might have its own ability to use it. So it's very important for any enterprise IT team or what you call as a digital transformation team to understand what the cloud providers are bringing onto the table and how it can help us rather than we get locked into that, right? So we need to pick the right things from that and use it in a way that we can build this, multi-cloud strategy where you have an ability to spread your data ecosystem across the provider so that you will not rely on one person, right? If there is anything happens with one provider, you should be in a spot to migrate that into another provider in a matter of days or maybe in months, right? That's so powerful at the enterprise level. So that's why I think that multi-cloud strategy, like hybrid cloud strategy or hybrid strategy, versus cloud, there's different scenarios that I have been with, because I worked for a Wells Fargo, I worked for many financial systems in my career. Every system has different, retail system is different, gaming is different, like every business has its own way of data volume, right? Financial, as I said, financial systems are more regulatory, retails get more sales data, gaming has more online data. There are varieties of data which can retrofit into different strategies, right? So
I think you mentioned several points, right, which go into the decision making of choosing the right cloud strategy. You're a great advocate of taking a cloud-centric approach, right? What if we have to summarize, right? Let's say there are a certain set of five, let's say 3 to 5 parameters when you make a decision of where do you want to store your data and how do you want to enable your application. How do you make that decision, and what are some of the parameters that are involved when you kind of finally make the decision on your cloud strategy?
So that's a good question. So when we need to use certain providers, what's the strategy, right? So some of the key points I look at it like how big is the provider, right? Because you will be completely, depending on them. If the provider goes down, your business is out. If it is a small organization, you will be risk running your application on that. So you need to make sure who is the right provider you have to pick, so that you have more confidence on the way how they're running their hardware business, right? Because your cloud will be running on their hardware. If then something happens to that, or the company goes down, your business is gone. So that's the number one priority. And also see how the cloud providers are partnering with all the different vendors, like software vendors, hardware vendors. Do they have any? Are they vendor agnostic or not? Right? Some providers may say that, oh, we don't work with them with XYZ or ABC. That creates a lot of friction for a customer who really wants to use that cloud solution, right? So we look at the stability of the provider. Are they vendor agnostic? How secure their installations are. How do they run? What we call it in cloud is, we call it as a estate, right? Estate is nothing but like millions of machines are running on the cloud. Just imagine like some of the providers running millions of nodes, and that we call that as an estate, and how effectively they are managing that estate, and how they're making that it's more secure, right? In today's world, everyone has like today there's more than 78 billion mobile devices, and there's a lot of data is moving in and out of those mobile devices, and all this data is collected into all this cloud solution and all. And there is a possibility that someone somewhere in this world sitting in their computer or mobile trying to hack into your application or whatnot. And those scenarios are very critical, that when you're building application on some of these providers, you need to be very confident that how they have built their security strategy, how the compliance is there, how their regulatory compliance are working with all the GDPR or whatnot, kind of COPA, all those kind of things, how easy to get approval from them. Those are very critical things that, and also how they run this estate at scale, right? If anything happens at one of the node is being hacked, how easily we can completely absolute that particular IP or a node or whatnot, so that you can secure your estate and start running your application without impacting the business, right? Just imagine someone is hacking your system and the entire application is going down, is bad for you. But just imagine if a provider is having an ability to isolate where the hack is happening and try to obsolete or obfuscate that particular region or a node or whatever it is in real time. That helps you to keep your business running. Even though it is going outage in certain region or certain part of the world, you will still continue to run it. So those are the very critical points that we basically look at, like, as I said, stability of the provider, vendor agnostic, how secure they keep their estate, and how their compliance, the data compliance or whatnot, how do they manage their access control thing. How do they manage their virtual private network? These are very critical for any business companies or enterprises to see how they can isolate their data out of millions of customers in the world, right? And these are the very critical decision will come into picture. How or what kind of service provider you should look for. And also, in my opinion, there are certain providers provide solution in such a way that the APIs, some of the providers have better API model where you can build better data mesh, and they're more secure in the microservice environment, and how effectively they can manage these API calls across their estate, across the software being installed on those estate of installation. Those are all will come into picture, right?
And the other thing that is very much pertinent, especially considering the huge amounts of data that AI and data analytics applications kind of consume, right? The security aspect of it becomes very crucial, right? Of all the 4 or 5 pointers that you mentioned in the framework, data compliance or data security is also a very important factor. Is data more safe on the cloud, or do you think that it is more safe on private networks?
See, it depends. Like on the cloud, that the cloud, there is a public cloud, there is a private cloud, right? And there is a in-house and all. And that's where the data strategy will come into picture, that under what scenario you need to use the public cloud versus private cloud, right? Let's imagine that someone has built an app, like pay XYZ app, and someone is sending the data from their mobile. It's basically It's a public code. They're sending from their mobile, and the application might be running on their mobile device, sending it to a public endpoint, right? They're sending all the data what they're interacting with. So those information is okay to collect. That goes through the public IP. But what we do is that when you move towards the cloud-centric approach, and when the data goes and flows through the cloud, there are two different ways, right? How when the data in transmission, how you can protect that, how the providers have an ability to protect the data in transmission, like how do they see the packets dropping is happening. Or for example, I can give you an example, like there are multiple ways you can have your application send data through the cloud or whatever the channel, right? For example, you can either send it through a JSON model, or for example, there is a gRPC is there, right? Which is like a more secure way where data is converted into a binary numbers, right? When that data transmit through the network, if someone hacks into that, you're going to just see numbers in there because you do not have a decryption key for that to see what exactly being transmitted. So we have to think through that, how you want to secure the data and which methodology you need to see. In today's world, when we talk about cloud-centric or approach, whatnot, gRPC is taking over the world, right? And when it comes to the microservices part of it, where data moves from point A to point B, gRPC protobuf is taking over everything, and where REST API is still the majority of the client-facing, customer-facing world is still running on that because it's very lean, right? So we can go deeper into that, but what I'm trying to say is that we look at how the product has been interacting with that particular customer, what information they're sending. If it is a PII information, how we make sure that PII information is being obfuscated or encrypted in transmission, and how we decrypt it. How do we preserve that or persist that in our cloud-centric approach? Is that a good way to put it in a in-house versus putting in a cloud with the secured encryption key or whatever, the secured VPN, private VPN, whatnot? There are multiple strategies are available, and it all depends on what you want to do with that, right? And again, I go back to the data security part of it, that if the cloud provider is breached for any reason, you lost the battle, right? That's the reason security is very critical. Compliance can come into next state, but the security is, someone break into your firewall, you're not, right? And that's very critical to figure out at what scenario you use public code versus private code is very different. So that's the reason understanding the cloud architecture is very critical for you to put a plan around the strategy, that what are how is your ecosystem in the enterprise level, and what are the data points out there, how your information is architected, and how this information can be collected or can be implemented in a cloud-centric approach, where we can collect those data in a secure manner, and how we can feed it back, and how we can store that, and how we can distribute that, how we can get an insight out of that. This data we are talking in multi-petabytes, right? There are a lot of sensors that IoT data comes in multi-petabyte in a given day. So transmitting all this data, processing it, doing in real time. Someone is driving a car, just imagine, right? Cars, running without the drivers, it's all like collecting humongous amount of information through the satellite or whatnot it is. So this can be a game-changing thing, right? The more you move towards the cloud-centric, you have an ability to collect the data and also distribute the data much faster way, right? The world is more dynamic, right? If you can't react or act proactively in much faster manner, someone else will do that. And that's how the competitive market, you need to break that barrier. Means you need to build your application in much faster, and you need to build it at scale. You should be able to ramp up and ramp down during the seasons where there is no demand. You can bring it down with the cloud strategy, right? If you go through the in-house, means you have to put up multi-million-dollar strategy to bring fleet of machines to host it on your local thing. And if it is not being used, that money is gone, right? Today you cannot use that. Then people started building the virtual machine concept in 5-6 years ago. Then that ran into some issues. Then that's when this cloud stuff came into picture, where all the startups started using this, and they saw the value of it, right? See, unless you don't see the value out of moving to the cloud strategy thing, there is no point in moving there. So as I said, some regulatory institution, they still prefer that, because for them to move their information to the cloud and to make sure the data is secure on the cloud, they have to spend a lot of money on that. And to get into the compliance, data compliance, then again, they have to spend a lot of money, because they already get compliant approved on their in-house deployment. But if they want to do that same thing on cloud, it's going to take them multi-years to make sure that how data is being managed and all whatnot. So they use strategy that what data sits in-house versus whatnot. So this is more on the regulatory institution, right? But online companies, where people are having access to the customer in real time and all, like banking system, especially banking system is, I'm talking about like app running on your mobile, or something is running on your PC or something like that, which is more like a next gen kind of application where you can capture the data in real time, get the data back into your cloud platform and process that and create that loop, feedback loop, seeing that if someone is having issues, you can literally know that in few seconds, you know that the customer is trying to make a payment. And if it is not going through that, and the jittering is happening for 2 to 3 seconds, you should be in a position to track the data and make sure that how you can fix it within next 2-3 seconds. Otherwise, the customer will churn immediately from your application. So that's the beauty of it, right?
Fantastic. My final question to you as we come to the end of this conversation, right? Cloud computing or cloud-centric approach when it comes to AI and data science applications, right, has enabled multiple innovations. Gen AI is its latest, byproduct. What do you predict is the next big breakthrough that the ability that cloud provides will be the next innovation?
I mean, in my opinion, as we know that more and more companies or the enterprises are moving towards cloud, and a lot of the first party and third party providers are all moving to the cloud, there will be gold mine of data will be available at your fingertips for any company, and everything will be available on the internet. So the key thing is that for any given enterprise or a startup, they will have their own data, and the next 5 to 10 years, what I can envision is that whatever the data is available outside of their own company or the enterprise, how they can use the data and create an hybrid strategy and see how the customers in their organization using their products are doing outside of their ecosystem in the market and in the world, and see how they can create a correlation between that and understand where are the opportunities. And that's where I feel that there will be millions of providers of data providers who can provide and feed data into generative AI or whatnot it is. It's basically going to create a context, right? Just imagine that. I'll take an example of Visa, right? Let's say someone is going to a restaurant and they're paying bill at restaurant, and they're using Visa to process that, and they're trying to come out of that restaurant, but it started raining, right? It started raining. So that rain information is not available for Visa or any of the product which is being handled at that point in time. When it started raining, let's say you have a sensors outside of that restaurant, and it's collecting the data of what the environment is, what's happening at that time. And if you take that sensor data or IoT data and correlate that into the customers being in that restaurant and paying the bill, there is a possibility that if the restaurant knows that there is something is happening outside of the environment, there's a probability that the customer might stay back for some more time, right? Or they see that, they look at outside, it's raining. If the restaurant knows that, they can upfront say that, okay, it's going to rain, there's going to be a hail, whatnot. So why don't you guys kick back here and we'll give you, free coffee or whatever it is. For example, we'll tell them we'll give you like a free tea or whatnot. Then the customer will stay back because the customer never anticipated that. And that's where you're going to provide next best experience that the customer will never expect. And when they start consuming your offerings, all the rewards, what we call, they might think about buying something else because it's raining outside. You cannot go and drive, or maybe they're walking distance within the downtown area. They have to walk back into their apartment or their home. Then there is the tendency of waiting for them more at your place. So what I'm trying to say is that all this data will become a connected ecosystem, right? Your today's most of the enterprise thinks about their own data, but they're going to come out of that and see what's happening with that customer outside of the ecosystem, and how this connected data ecosystem can help them to engage with their customer. And eventually they can monetize on that. And that's where I feel it's going to be more powerful technology, which obviously going to be a model or whatnot is going to feed back into all these things to predict what's going to happen. In my opinion, I think it's more about contextual approach, how a generative AI can handle the contextual approach of anything. Today, if you think about Gen AI or whatnot, LLM models, what people have been working on, it's being trained based on the certain amount of data being fed into that, right? Let's say if the patient is having his BP going up to 180 degree, 180, and that data is only going at that time, but you don't know why the context around that, why it's happening, right? Today the LLM model may not know that. They'll send a message to the nurse saying that, oh, this patient reached 180, please go and attend it. But the doctor might be there trying something else with them, and he might be walking somewhere, and maybe he might be running somewhere. You don't know the context. So what I'm trying to say is that the next gen will be all about context. If something is happening, it could be a biased thing. It could be an hallucination because it's looking in one point of view. Just think about there is a concept called quantum computing, right? That quantum computing is more about you flip a coin, it doesn't say, in a generalized state, it may say it's a dark tail, right? But in quantum computing, it's picking all this probability of how many times it is flipping. And it takes every move and see what is the correlation between all those things. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, that you take all these different contexts and create a more solid foundation, and then you come up with the solution to understand your customer behavior, and that will be the next level experience for the customer. Could be a patient, or it could be a traveler, it could be a retail customer, it could be a gamer, and it could be a bank customer. Anybody who can understand that, oh, I didn't say anything like this. How come these guys are able to understand what I'm thinking? Whatever the customer is thinking, if the consumer, the business can understand, and if they can provide that experience, that's where the customer will think that, oh, these guys are amazing. The reason why people stick with the AWS, I mean, not AWS, the Amazon shopping, because anytime you go there and tell them that, I didn't like the product, I want to return it, they will never say no. They know that a lot of time people will cheat for a few times, but once they realize that the customer loyalty is there, the customer will become more trustworthy themselves. That they realize that they did bad, but they know that Amazon is so good, then they start buying more there. So they know in the early stage things can happen, but the long-term strategy is very critical for anyone. So understanding that holistic context is what I look forward to. That all these LLM models and all will never get into that level, right? Just imagine connecting the ecosystem coming from 100 different ecosystems, sending out 100 different data points. How do you know which one is connected to what? So building that meta information of all this context is the success for the future, right? So that's what I think. So
great. I think the really cool examples of what cloud-centric approach can enable through AI and data science. On that note, Venkatesh, thank you so much for your time. This was indeed a great conversation.
no, it's my pleasure to be on this. So thanks for having me.